I'm going to tell you about a real life patient. His name is Mr. Ewing, obviously not his real name. He's a man that I rehabilitated on a medium secure unit about 5 years ago. I've changed his name, I've changed some demographic details, etc. But the essence of this case is real. So the first question, what was Mr. Ewing's index offence? Very serious, obviously. It was murder of his wife in 2013. This happened shortly after their relationship broke down. He stabbed her several times in the living room after an argument they had. So it goes without saying that this is obviously a horrific offence and the suffering of the victim cannot be forgotten. So for all you hunchback trolls out there on your keyboards, this video is not about excusing to any degree his actions, but rather to understand Mr. Ewing and others like him. That's the essence of what being a forensic psychiatrist is. So Mr. Ewing had spent about 7 years in prison for murder, and then he was transferred to this medium secure unit where I worked with him. If you want to know a bit more about what happens on these medium secure units, check out my video about life on a psychiatric ward, what it's really like. So when Mr. Ewing had assessments in prison, he did show some level of insight into his index offence and his previous substance misuse, but not actually about his own personality structure. And I thought he needed to do this to really decrease his future risk. So myself and my multidisciplinary team helped him understand that through intense psychotherapy. So I've picked this case as it really stands out because there's clear connections between Mr. Ewing's childhood traumas and his adult behaviour. So let's take it back. What are the significant elements of Mr. Ewing's background? Well, sadly, his mother abandoned him when he was about 1 year old, and he had no further contact with her for many, many years until he was in prison. Mr. Ewing was fostered and then he was eventually adopted, and he kind of got mixed messages about why he was abandoned at birth. He was told by his foster parents that his mother was a drug addict, and he was told by services that she was too young to handle him. His foster parents provided for him physically, but he felt kind of emotionally rejected by them. He described the other foster children as having more love and affection, and that he was more harshly punished. And what happened is he developed these feelings of worthlessness and of feeling unimportant, and that the people around him and the world would just reject him. He described that his foster mother was emotionally harsh, often insulting him. She would constantly be telling him that he was useless, and she was also physically abusive towards him, such as hitting him with a belt. In fact, he recalled this incident to me when he was a little boy, I think maybe 10 or 11. Him and his siblings, his foster siblings, were jumping up and down on the sofa. They tore the fabric. All the others got told off, and according to Mr. Ewing, he got the belt. His foster father was in the house, but he was very distant, he was very dismissive, and Mr. Ewing said that he'd spend days in the same house as his foster father without even talking to him. So initially, Mr. Ewing was quite paranoid. He felt that his foster parents only really looked after him because they got paid to do it. And unfortunately, this idea was reinforced when he was asked to leave at the age of 16, which is when the foster funding had run out. Mr. Ewing was sexually abused during a school trip by a teacher on one occasion around the age of 10, and he didn't tell anybody about this until years later during therapy in our medium secure unit. And I have to say that previous sexual abuse is a common theme. I've seen it in Robert Maudsley and also Robert Napper. He's a man who killed a random woman in front of her child in Wimbledon Common in 1992. Fascinating case, go check out my video on this channel about him. Mr. Ewing got a reasonable qualifications, and he had a number of manual jobs. He was working as a taxi driver and as a delivery driver. In fact, he was doing these things right up until his index offence. He had used drugs heavily in his early teens, though not really leading up to his adulthood, not leading up to the murder. He had issues with low mood on and off throughout his life, and he actually took an overdose at the age of 18, although he was never formally diagnosed. He'd never previously seen a psychiatrist. So, what were the circumstances leading up to the murder? Mr. Ewing started having an intimate relationship with the victim in his late teens, and they subsequently married when they were both 20. So, dear viewers, I'm interested to know, do you think that most marriages that young, say 20 or under, are doomed to fail or not? Do you yourself or know of anybody that's had a marriage of this age that's worked out well? I'm genuinely interested to know. Let me know in the comments below. However, in Mr. Ewing's case, unfortunately, they became quite emotionally detached very quickly. Mr. Ewing would spend his time fishing or going down the pub when he wasn't working, rather than spending time with his wife, even when they had a young baby. Mr. Ewing felt that he provided for her financially, even though he didn't connect with her emotionally, and therefore He felt that he was doing his duty. He was providing a salary. He never questioned his worth as a husband or even as a father. Mr. Ewing even told me that he'd feel a sense of relief when he would come home some days from work and from fishing, and his wife and the baby had gone to his wife's sister's home, which was down the road. And this was happening more and more. She was spending nights away from him, and inevitably, you know how this story goes, their marriage fell apart. So the index offence occurred when they were both in their late 20s, and Mr. Ewing just went into this murderous rage. They had this argument about her forgetting to withdraw some cash for him as she had promised, and they were watching TV together, and then in the ad break, Mr. Ewing goes to the kitchen, he grabs a kitchen knife, comes back and stabs her 20 times. And what did he do immediately after this? Hello, cruel world. What you just saw there was a tiny little tantalising taste, kind of nutty, of a much longer episode. You should go check it out if you're interested. The link will be in the description below. If you're a fan of either true crime or mental illness, or the crossover between the two, then you've got to go and check out my main YouTube channel, A Psych for Sore Minds. My name is Dr. Sohom. I'm a consultant forensic psychiatrist. I assess mentally disordered offenders for a living so that you don't have to. My channel covers a whole range, a smorgasbord of topics related to true crime and mental illness. For example, high-profile true crime cases with my own kind of personal psychoanalysis of individuals. I discuss issues related to criminality. I discuss individual diagnoses. I give advice about psychiatric problems. I interview ex-patients. I do a lot. There is something for everybody on my channel, and I implore you to go and check it out. You can even steal some of my ideas, palm them off as your own to impress your friends and impress people at dinner parties. It's all good. I've got your back. Until next time, stay euthymic, check out my channel, and please do not forget, I love you.